problems right now, and we don't need them. So I'm just hoping that we get everything together at this particular point in time. So just tired of it. Just tired of everything. So 216-249-6658 is the number you call, and we have our guest in the studio. Before I say anything, T-Rex, we got some important news as far as the Brittany Griner front. Brittany Griner, the White House is working out a deal for Brittany Griner, the professional basketball player who's been detained by Russia. What happened is that Russia has demanded that they release arms dealer, and I know his first name is Victor. So they are trying to release an arms dealer, Victor Bout, for Brittany Griner. Now, I don't know how that's going to work out, but she should have been freed already from Russian detention. So let's just hope that it happens. So, T-Rex, we have the guest here. I'm going to bring in the entrance music right now, okay? So let's do that right now. So now this is another election. It feels like another one right now. So that's why we playing a little bit of Patti LaBelle, a little bit upbeat. And I have one of the most upbeat judges in my studio today. Please welcome the fabulous Miss Wanda C. Jones, Judge Wanda C. Jones in the building. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
No problem. So if you want to push that up a little bit, my microphone, thank you very much. Everybody can hear you. So, all right. So you are a judge already, correct?
I am.
Okay. And what judge are you with? Or what jurisdiction are you with?
So I am in the Cuyahoga County Common Pleas Court. I am one of 34 judges in that court, and we are the trial court. So I handle trial felonies all the way up to capital murder level cases, and then I handle civil cases that are, $15,000 or more in controversy. Okay. And then administrative appeals, things like that.
Okay. So how long have you had that position for?
So this is my second time on the bench. I have been on the bench this time since December 20th. So a little over 7 months. Okay.
So you've been there for 7 months, and were you, did you have to run for it, or were you appointed?
I was appointed. I actually I took the seat that was vacated by Judge Joe Russo, who passed away.
Okay. And rest in peace, Joe Russo. So, and before that, you were a judge as well?
So before that, I was with the Attorney General's office. I was an assistant attorney general, and I was there for about a year. And prior to that, I was on the bench for 2 years in the same court, different judge, but same court.
Okay, different judge, but same court.
Yeah, I took over for Justice Donnelly when he went to the Supreme Court. So I was appointed, and I was there for 2 years.
Okay. So you are on the ballot right now?
Yes, I will be on the ballot in November. So right now is a special election, the August primary, special primary, I guess. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to be on that ballot. I will be on the ballot in November. Okay. November 8th.
Okay. And you have an opponent?
I do.
Okay. Who is that person, if people don't know?
My opponent ran for mayor against Justin Bibb, and he wasn't successful there. So he's running for judge.
So wait a minute. And this is how and I hate to, this is how politics works. So you're running against former Cleveland City Council president, former Cleveland City Council person, Kevin Kelly.
Well, he's running against me.
He's running against you. Right. So it's pretty much it's yours it's your seat. He's just trying to get it. Okay. I got confused. So even as much astute as I am in the political field, I feel sometimes you get a little bit like, wait a minute, wait, what? Okay. So why should the public reelect you in November to retain your seat?
Well, first of all, I'm an experienced judge. When I took over the docket that I took over, it was in pretty rough condition. I think there were over 50, at least 50 civil motions that were beyond time guidelines. I've gotten that number down to 22. Every month the docket is decreasing in terms of disposing of cases. I've been disposing of cases that have been there for a long time. I know what I'm doing. I have a very good judicial temperament, and I'm a proven excellent judge. Not only that, I'm not a politician. I don't believe politics belongs in courtrooms. And I think if you want to ensure that our justice system works the way it's supposed to work, you need to have judges who have the right characteristics, and politics has no place there.
Right. 216-249-6658 is the number you call in to speak to Judge Wanda Jones. And pretty much you have been on the campaign trail before, correct?
I have. I ran in 2020 to keep that seat. And I have run in the last 3 common pleas elections. So in 18, 20, and I will be on the ballot in 22. Okay.
And as far as, you said Cuyahoga County Common Pleas, correct?
Correct.
How many African American judges are there?
So there are a total of 4 out of 34 judges, and that includes me.
Okay. So you're one of the few and the proud. So how do you feel as an African American woman, being like out of the, 4 judges there who are African American? How does that make you feel?
Well, I think that it's important to have a diversity of background, diversity of experiences with judges. I think it's important. And when I say diversity of experience, I'm not talking just color. I'm not talking just gender. I'm talking about even backgrounds. Before I was a judge, my practice when I was a practicing attorney was family law. So I was a civil attorney, and I handled probably the most emotionally charged cases that you can experience in the legal world. So when people are going through divorces and custody battles, they're pretty tough. And that was my background. And I think a lot of candidates think that the path to the bench is, you should be a prosecutor first and then become a judge. And I think that leads to outcomes that the public isn't necessarily happy with. I think we have to have judges that have all kinds of backgrounds.
Right. So,
and honestly, I will say my background as a family law attorney has helped resolve so many civil cases before trial.
Right. And the thing about it is like family law is, how was it practicing family law? Because I know it's the toughest, because you got pretty much family law is involved with divorces, ending of, marriages, also custody for the children, and those things could get pretty ugly. So how did you, as being a family law attorney and being a family law, how did you handle those situations?
Well, I believe that when someone used to walk into my office, I would ask them a question. They would go through the whole story and they would tell me, what they wanted. And I would say to them, like, if you would like at the end of this whole process, when you go to your child's wedding, for you and your child's other parent to be able to at least be in the picture together and be able to smile and both be genuinely happy to be in that space, then I will take your case. But if your end goal is to make the other person miserable and to make them pay and to punish them, then I would not take those cases. And the reason why is because all of those decisions, all of the strategy, it was all driven based on what was best for the child. And that has always been the approach that I would take. And it helped.
Okay.
It helped me figure out which cases to take and which ones to pass on.
Right. And, the thing about it is like, even though there's all kinds of stuff that happens in family law and other things. The problem is that you have so many people like, so you wouldn't take the bitter cases. Like I want to see them crushed with a car.
That's right. Because I know that at the end of the day, there is no result that would make that person happy. There's no result that they're going to be satisfied with. So it's unreasonable. When you have unreasonable expectations, I didn't want to set myself up for failure because all of my business came from referrals. I never had to advertise, and I always had lots of business.
Really?
Always.
Okay. How long was you doing family law before you became a judge?
I graduated from law school in 2012. So I took my first case on my way home from being sworn in Columbus, and I didn't stop.
Okay. So and how long have you practiced law pretty much? You left like for 8 years?
2012.
2012.
Yeah, this is a second career for me. I worked in banking. I worked at a daycare center. I was a mail carrier. So I had a lot of experience before I went to law school.
What made you go to law school?
I knew that I wanted to keep my kids in the same school district. I knew I needed to make some more money. I did a sort of like an online assessment of where my skill set was. And it said medical school. I was too old for that. Law school. There were part-time programs, so I applied to them. And then my first day of law school, I knew I made the right decision.
So what made you decide to go into the family law practice? What made you decide to do that?
I handled my own divorce. And
Really?
Yeah. And my ex-husband and I are very good friends. So, yeah, I handled that. And someone saw me in the court building and said, "Hey, are you a lawyer?" I said, "Yes, I am." And so I handled their case for them. And then they referred me. And then I got lots of referrals.
So you pretty much handled your own divorce. So, and you didn't make it any bitter or anything like that, right?
No, my ex-husband and I are good friends.
Okay. So the thing about it is like with that, the exes can't, maybe after a certain while, hopefully that it happens because at the end of the day, you're still, everybody's human. So people make mistakes, some big, some small, and you gotta do what's best for everything else. But
you have to be able to look at things from the other person's perspective. And I think that that also plays into being a really good judge, is being able to hear both sides of an argument and to make a fair decision based on the law, but not jumping to a conclusion. And that's my personality. So it served me well in my divorce, and it serves me well on the bench.
Okay. So as far as, but you were a mail carrier before this. So a lot of people wouldn't know that. How was that being? Okay, let's go to the mail carrier thing. How the post office is slow as what now? But how was that? How did that prepare you to what you're doing now as far as being on the bench? Because everybody talks about I have the credentials, I've been in law school, things of that nature. But a lot of people before that, you had to make a decision. So how did the other jobs help you with being a judge?
So I did not finish. I took a very non-traditional route to law school. Most people go directly from high school. They do their 4 or 5 years in college, and then they go directly to law school. Well, I didn't finish my undergraduate degree until I was in my 30s. I was already a mom. I was married. By the time I even finished my bachelor's degree. As a matter of fact, I worked full time while I was attending Ursuline College. I was in their UCAP program. So I worked at a bank, and I worked in their collections department. And the reason that I got that job was because when I was delivering mail, got chased by a few dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very hard work. I was like, I need to go back to school. So I got hired at MBNA on the spot for an interview and went back to school, working during the day. I went to school in the evenings at Ursuline, which was right around the corner from MBNA. Okay.
So you went to Ursuline, and where'd you go to law school at?
Cleveland Marshall College of Law.
Cleveland Marshall College of Law.
So,
okay.
Yeah.
So as being, and with that life experience that you had, as being one of the older people in law school, how was that, dealing with the fresh out of high school, fresh out of college
Yes.
graduates?
So I went in the evening. I was not a full-time day student.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was at work during the day, and then I would go to school in the evenings. So there were a lot of people in my section that also worked.
Okay.
So there were police officers, there were teachers, there were a couple of nurses. I think there was a few doctors. So the people that were in that program in the evening, most of them were working adults.
Okay. So pretty much they were working adults. So they were like, you know what, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this
Right.
for me.
Right.
So with there was not a lot of free time during the times that, did you have to, what was the sacrifice that you had to put up when you was doing that?
Well, I mean, it's just like campaigning right now. I mean, there's a sacrifice of time with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, my family's always been supportive they were supportive when I decided to go back to school. They were supportive when I went through law school, and they have been so supportive while I've been campaigning.
Okay. So you have recently had a fundraiser, correct?
I did. It was
Okay.
very fun. It was a Jazz for Justice fundraiser on Sunday.
What time was that? Where was that at?
It was at another place in, I think it was Willoughby,
Mm-hmm.
and it was from 4 to 8.
Okay. How was that like? How was that like?
It was great. The most interesting thing about it, and what I loved about it, is that the people that attended were people that don't normally attend judicial fundraisers. Usually it's always lawyers that attend. And I feel like it's important for regular people who aren't necessarily into politics, but when they go to vote, they skip the judicial races because they don't know who the candidates are. So those were the people I really wanted to come to the fundraiser and to learn about me, learn about what I stand for and what I do. And I feel like we accomplished that. So it was very successful, in my opinion.
Very successful.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want to do it again. I would like to do it every year, even when I'm not running, because I think it'll give people an opportunity to, meet the people that are on the bench making decisions that affect everybody.
Okay. So who was the performers there, or did you just have a regular band?
Forecast was there.
Forecast.
Yeah.
Shout out to them.
Yeah, they're good.
They are very good. Them and Hubs Group, who
Yeah.
hopefully they're performing at Wade Oval, even though it looks a little soggy outside,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. So as far as, when is the next stop on your campaign trail, pretty much?
You mean?
Oh, next fundraiser.
Oh, it's not planned yet.
That's not planned yet?
Yeah. I do plan on having another one. But that one was kind of special because it was not the usual. Usually it's downtown at one of the bars. The lawyers come after work. And that one was not even, it wasn't in the city. It was an evening thing, and families came. It was great.
Okay. So you pretty much had so how has compared to the last time you was on the campaign trail, comparing to this time, how has that been? Because you said you ran in 2020,
Right.
and now you're running again in 2022. So how was that like compared to what is it like now?
Yeah. So in 2020, the pandemic happened.
Right.
Right as things were just getting started. So everything was shut down.
Mm-hmm.
People weren't comfortable with someone coming to their door. All the parades were canceled. This time around, it seems like people are so tired of COVID that every time there's an event, it's packed. So all of the festivals that have been happening, it seems like when I ran in 18, there weren't nearly as many people at different festivals as there are now. So I've been able to go to all those things this time around, and there are always so many people there.
Right. I think that people are tired of being stuck bored and stuck in a house.
Right.
And there's only so many Zoom calls that you can actually do.
Right.
So those things happen for a particular reason. So you have to, sometimes you do have to get out more.
Yeah.
Because, you can't be like, I'm stuck in the house. And it's like during the time that the pandemic happened, it was hard doing this show, because of the social distancing aspect. We had to social distance, but it also in 2020, other things happened. So the last two police officers involved in the George Floyd killing were also sentenced. So, you had the pandemic, then the riots. How did you feel about those things happening during 2020?
Yeah, that there were, people would ask me during that time, like, questions like, do I believe Black Lives Matter? And there were a lot of protests. And I'm frustrated. You mentioned you were frustrated earlier today with the shootings that are happening. Like, I'm frustrated too. I think we have really got to start coming up with some solutions. And I've really gotten sort of when it comes to politicians and politics, I think we can't rely on politicians to solve this problem. I think we need the people to come together. Like back in the 60s, that's what would happen. The people would come together and demand of our politicians that they do the right thing. And that's not happening. So I had a lot of hope when the George Floyd killing happened that we would begin to see real changes. And here I am still saying that we don't have Black judges.
That's the thing. Reminds me, and the shootings in America that happen, especially the mass shootings. So we're going to touch that on a later subject because unfortunately I had to look at Higher Learning. I watched Higher Learning, the movie last night. So it was like, oh yeah, this is going to be like, I'm still frustrated now. So it's crazy. So,
well, I'm going to tell you, I'll just tell you a quick story about something that happened this weekend. I actually wanted to go see Miss Chalet too. I heard it was pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good.
But I was at Castle School in Maple Heights, and I was talking to the director of the school, and we were talking about a kid she was telling me about a kid who got sentenced to 6 years for, I think it was a robbery. He had been bound over to the adult court. And as I'm listening to her, it turned out I sentenced that kid. And I remember that whole week before I sentenced him, how just frustrated I was that we didn't catch the situation before he committed this act that required mandatory prison time. So when he pled on his case, because he didn't have a trial, he pled, and there was a mandatory prison sentence. And he was a kid when he did what he did. And I just feel like we have really got to start doing something to figure out what kids need before they get to a point where they're acting out in a violent way, where people get hurt or killed, or where they pick up a gun and they're shooting into a random house where someone gets hit with a bullet.
How do you feel about mandatory sentences?
I don't like mandatory sentences, but that is what our law has in it. I mean, mandatory sentences are built into the statutes. I think that leaves the court, it leaves a judge very little wiggle room to do much. That young man, I didn't think that, I believe his sentence was 6 years. And I didn't think that it required 6 years in prison in order to rehabilitate him, to sufficiently punish him, and to meet all of the required factors that I have to consider when I'm sentencing someone. And I didn't think that he needed a 6-year sentence in order to accomplish the purposes of sentencing. But I didn't have a choice.
So, by anybody who is listening out there at WNRV1081.com, who creates mandatory sentences?
Our legislature. So we have 3 branches of government. We have our executive branch, we have our legislative branch, and we have our judicial branch. And what is supposed to happen is the legislative branch, that's who passes the laws. And the courts, the judges, we are required to interpret the laws as they are written. And so if a mandatory sentence is in the law, I have to follow it. And I do believe in following our laws as written. I don't believe in legislating from the bench. I feel like if there is a law that isn't right and we're following that law, the public is aware of that law, and the public doesn't like that law, then the public should pressure the legislature to change it.
Or in turn, with voting, the person who is the legislator, they should vote that person out and replace them with somebody who is going to make it, easier for people to get rehabilitated. Do you think that mandatory sentences help or hurt rehabilitation of anybody that committed a crime?
I mean, because I don't personally believe that mandatory sentences are the best way of approaching crime. I think it takes away the discretion from a judge. And I think, in some cases it can hurt. Sometimes if a person is in prison for longer than they need to be, if they're not getting the, supports that they need, if they're not getting the mental health treatment that they need, that doesn't help.
Okay. So, I mean, the thing about it is that we have so many, mental health problems and disparities and, triggers that would trigger mental health and counselors and things that need to be helped. But, do you think that more outside, outpatient things are needed for these people who are suffering from mental health instead of just throwing them behind bars or
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I'm doing is I have been working with outside organizations. Like there's one called Step by Step. It's on the West 25th. And they actually have case managers who will come into my courtroom and they sign people. They do the intake right there. And they sign people up for Medicaid. They get them mentors. They work with them to ensure they're getting mental health. If they need a referral for inpatient drug treatment, they get them that. And I'm seeing pretty good results from doing that. So absolutely, I think that the person I put on probation, who I set up with the mental health and substance abuse provider, like Step by Step, I think he's got a much better chance of staying out of prison.
Right. So with everything that's been going on with, issue 24, as far as police, issue 24, the Cleveland police don't have the numbers. I think they're down 245 police officers. What do you think about that issue? And what do you think about the shortage of police officers in the city of Cleveland?
So I think it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Mm-hmm. You need good police officers, but so many people have a negative perception of police that the kids who would grow up to become good police officers, they're discouraged from it. They're afraid of police. So you end up with police forces that don't represent the community that they're in. And just like I say, we need diversity on a bench, we need diversity in our police forces. So if we really want to solve the problem of relationships between law enforcement and the community, we certainly have to have diversity on the forces, and we need to have accountability within our police departments. Training, necessary training. You can't have police officers working, 15, 20-hour shifts and then expecting them to come into court to testify as a witness in a case. Right. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. And what about, as far as, prosecutors, prosecuting attorneys? I'm sure you work with a lot of them. What would you like to see more from the prosecutor's office, if anything, that needs to be changed?
I would like to see people who are charged with a crime only being charged for the crimes that there's evidence to prove. I would like to see, less overcharging. And I would like to see everybody following the same set of rules.
Right. So are you saying less overcharging? Like, indictment on this, and then they throw this. So they throw 15 indictments to a person, hoping that at least 2-3 of them stick. Is that a problem?
Well, if you charge someone with a 15 count indictment, then the odds are is that person's bond is going to be higher. And so they're going to remain in jail for the whole pendency of their case. And by the time they get to the end, they are more willing to accept a plea rather than going to trial. Or they will feel like they're going to get a penalty for going to trial. And that's not the way our system is supposed to work. So I always make sure people understand that in my courtroom, you want to have your trial, you get your trial. There's not going to be a penalty because you exercised your constitutional right to a trial. And the state is going to be bound to our Constitution and our laws, just like the defendant is. So the state has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt every single element. And evidence is going to be, we're going to follow the rules of evidence as far as what evidence comes in and what evidence doesn't.
Okay, so example, you have attorneys who charge an arm and a leg, or you have legal aid that, they have caseloads because people can't afford the attorney. And, they take, and the attorney says, well, take this plea. Otherwise, it's going to be X amount of dollars for you to go to trial. Take this plea or something like that. What would you say to that person that's getting that advice from the attorney that's supposed to be representing them, like getting them off or getting them that? What would you say?
Well, and I'm sure that this varies depending on what county you're in and depending on what public defender's office you're in. But I know that our public defender's office down in Cuyahoga County, they have some excellent attorneys that will try cases, and they put the time and the effort into it and believe in what they're doing. So if you feel like you didn't commit that crime, and you have to weigh whether you want to take your risks at trial, but it's a personal decision, and it's your right. So you want to take your case to trial, take your case to trial.
Okay, that's what's up. And the one thing that I've seen is, the fines and fees adding up, especially if it's a misdemeanor or something like that. And then they show you, the example for somebody, they show you how much, every time that you request is a pretrial examination, things of that nature. They show you like, oh, they're going to like every $20 to $10 and the fees are adding up. And it's like, well, the justice system just wants money. If I just pay this minimum amount of money, then I could just get out of here. What do you say to that?
So I don't do much with misdemeanors. The majority of the cases that I handle, they're felonies. There sometimes will be a misdemeanor tacked on, or maybe a felony that was pled down to a misdemeanor, which is somewhat problematic anyway, because if it's not, if there wasn't evidence to prove the felony, then why not just dismiss the case? And there are cases that I've seen like that, and I point these things out on the record, but judges don't have all the power in the courtroom. The state is the most powerful person in the courtroom. And so, the only thing I can do when we talk about fees is I can say, listen, if I put someone on probation, they have supervision fees and they have court costs. But one of the incentives that I use is if a person's unable to pay their court costs, they're able to do community work service. They're able to, if they comply with probation and, community control supervision, like sometimes I'll say you have to go to therapy. So if they go to therapy, go a couple times to therapy, then as an incentive for them to keep going, I'll waive supervision fees that they've accumulated. Or if they finish everything early, I'll waive supervision costs as an incentive and to let them know they're doing the right thing.
Okay. That's what's up. We're going to go to break now. So shout out to the legendary Aaliyah. With a try again. And we're going to do this, and hopefully that we can try again in August. And then in November with the general, we're going to talk about the power of voting and why is it down. Back on the headline, Eye on Nerve DJs after these messages. We got some fans.